My appeal for reason in this matter is simple and direct. The doctor and his companions have not denied that they brought the fever among us. They say it was an accident, and I believe them. For the simple reason that if they were, in fact, agents of the refusions, they could have achieved their objective in a much simpler way. One in which they would not have exposed themselves to this danger.
But they're refusions.
That's no argument.
Then I have another. The fever is here. We have no answer for it. And it might well be that they are the only ones who can cure it.
Our microbiologists may still find an answer.
Perhaps. But if we were to agree that the doctor and his friends could, what is the value in expelling them from the spaceship?
Any particular memories of William Hartnell?
Well, again, you know, I'd seen him as a villainous character in so many black and white British films that the transition didn't occur. You know, the man who had been on the screen was the man you were working with. It's strange. It was odd to be watching them 3 years or 4 years previously, and then suddenly to be working with them on the television. He was very professional, very precise, and knew what he wanted to do, you know, and of course he'd been doing the role for some time, and so he knew what was good for his presentation of himself, so that shone through as well.
Then 2 years later it was Doctor Who again with Patrick Troughton, this time in Fury from the Deep. Any particular memories about the locations or costumes?
Costumes, yes. It was at the height of the popularity of Carnaby Street. And one day the wardrobe lady said, tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, I think it must have been before the rehearsal started, Carnaby Street. And so we all trooped down there. And we went into Lord John. I don't know if that rings any bells with you. And all these wonderful... They were in wool and silk and that sort of stuff. They were very expensive, but they wanted sort of futuristic looking things. I think that the designs were based on the West Coast Californian casual clothing, and the English designer had sort of sharpened them up and made them more sort of minimal, if you like. And so I got a silky, woolly, what do you call them, polo neck sweater, and trousers that, you know, drain pipe trousers, and boots, slip-on boots. Wonderful they were. I should have bought them, because sometimes you can buy the things you use in theatre or television. And they cost a fortune. The whole thing cost a fortune. And of course we went into this shop, and there was a jazz band playing from a soundtrack somewhere, you know. It was at the height of Carnaby Street. I mean, that's all disappeared now, but it was the real thing, I remember. The filming was very memorable. We went down in a coach to Margate, and we were put up at the Nayland Rock Hotel, which, as you know, straddles the promenade and the beach, shown to our rooms. Mine was overlooking the sea, and then it's dinner time. We all came down into the hall to go to dinner. Great shock. You couldn't get in unless you wore a tie. So, you know, revolution was about to start when suddenly the head waiter appeared with an armful of ties, and everybody, all the males got a tie, and so everybody got to eat. What else? On the beach, standing about it, in my Lord John stuff, wrapped in a huge duffel coat because it was quite cold. It was fine, but it was very cold. And then I had a wonderful shot. They said, right, Roy, go right down there to the sea, which was miles away, and so I trudged down there. Now, on action, we want you to run like hell, because I think something had happened to my wife, hadn't she? All the stuff was coming out of the pipe. I don't remember. You know, just keep running. And they picked me up on a Zoom and held it for some time. That was quite exhilarating. Then I remember the take when my wife was sort of taken over, enchanted by the fury from the deep, and she had to walk into the sea, and so we saw her silhouette, because the sun was coming that way, saw her silhouette walking down into the thing, and she was very brave. She went under and then cut, and she was whisked out, put into the helicopter, and it flew her back to the hotel. And I think my feeling was that they'd built a pipeline, hadn't they, on the beach? Yes, and I had to peer at the sea and sort of look worried and do things like that. But it was lovely. It was very enjoyable.
What about the notorious foam?
Oh, the foam really got to one later on in the serial when we had to go to Ealing and do a day's filming, and I remember standing sort of almost shoulder high in it, reacting to the stuff. But I think I overreacted because that particular shot was never used in the transmission, and then had to wander around the corridors and open doors, and the thing rushed out at one and react again. But once again, I was overacting, so that wasn't put into the thing. And then the stuff started to get on one, and I think they had to give me another white jacket because I was the scientific person. And so really one was quite glad when it had finished, because you were up to the eyes in it, literally.
Any memories of Victor Madden?
Victor Madden, oh yes, again, I mean, like William Hartnell, even Patrick Troughton, because one had seen Patrick Troughton. Do you remember the Olivia Hamlet in 1948? Well, Patrick Troughton played you're going to tell me, was it the player king or the first player in that? Some part, because I was looking in some old film books recently, and his name came up. I thought, oh my goodness, they all again had been doing, bits and things, and then he'd got his part. Victor Madden very much dyed-in-the-wool Cockney. He lived just at the edge of where London stops and the fields begin, and used to drive in every day, I think. And he had a tape recorder, which in 1968 was quite bulky, and on it he'd recorded his own lines with spaces for the lines of the other people, and he learnt his lines that way. He was very much the Victor Madden that he'd always been in the films. I mean, you could cite 50 films, couldn't you, that he'd been in? I mean, they were so well known because they always gave you that same persona in the films. I think one thing about the rehearsal room was that there was a tabletop football thing, that you would do with your hands. And that was very popular, I think, with Victor Madden and John Abineri. Again, I'm quoting from memory of 40 years ago, so I may be wrong, but some of the people really enjoyed using it, I remember.
Margot Hayhoe?
Margot Hayhoe, yes, a lovely lady, short, quite small. I'd worked with on several televisions before, so it was lovely to work with somebody else work with her again, in fact, on Doctor Who. She was very calm, very easy. Like Hugh David was so calm about everything. Never got ruffled or anything. Margot now, I think, is quite high up in the TV hierarchy. Let's get the word right.
One person who's got a bit of a reputation from Fury from the Deep is the helicopter pilot.
Yeah.
What memories of him?
Well, if it's right, and I mean, it was the helicopter pilot. It was one evening in the bar after a day's filming, waiting to go in to eat, when this chap was drinking. There was a small group of us at the bar standing chatting, and he finished his drink. I think I remember orange was in it, so perhaps gin was in it as well, I don't know. Or, let's face it, he may have been a teetotaler. He finished his drink, said something, finished his drink, and then got hold of his glass and had quite powerful hands and crushed it. It was a ball glass, and everybody turned and looked. And the next moment, his hands were going to his mouth, and all these pieces of glass were going into his mouth, which he promptly chewed and then swallowed. And the bar just came to a standstill, Anyway, conversation gradually resumed, and then he either bought himself another drink or somebody bought him another drink, and the same thing happened. And, well, it was just amazing. I'd never seen anybody do that before. That you thought, well, what happens? I mean, he must have an iron inside or something, because it could cut into your bowels and everything, couldn't it? But there we are.
If there had ever been a sequel to either The Ark or Fury from the Deep, would you have returned to the roles of Maniac from The Ark or Harris from Fury? Yes,
indeed. I mean, as a jobbing actor, you very often take what comes up. I mean, it's not very often that I've refused things. I have on certain occasions, but certainly yes, because it was such a happy time doing them and working with such good people and being able to watch people like Hartnell and Troughton particularly. So yes, gladly I would have taken them up again.
Having worked with Hartnell and Troughton, did you ever meet or work with any of the other actors who have played Doctor Who?
No, never. No. I've got a feeling I was in a broadcast once where Tom Baker was there, but again, that may be just a memory that floats into the memory box but isn't a true one.
Did you ever consider taking, or were you ever offered any other parts in Doctor Who?
Yes, I once auditioned for the dog in Doctor Who.